Everyone, happy Friday. Welcome to the Lifeway Social Insider email and video this week. I wrote two things on the Lifeway Social blog. I wrote a blog post entitled Mr. Zuckerberg Goes to Washington, 7 Observations and Thoughts regarding Mark Zuckerberg's testimony before Congress. And then I reposted a book review that I wrote for the Lifeway Pastors blog. I was asked to write a book review on this book, Media Journalism and Communications, A Student's Guide. So I'm going to talk mostly about the Zuckerberg stuff for most of our time, and then I might just give you a recommendation for this book at the end. Mr. Zuckerberg Goes to Washington, 7 Observations and Thoughts. So I actually thought that Mark Zuckerberg's testimony was only on Wednesday this week, so I was afraid that I was going to miss it because I had a lot of meetings on Wednesday. But it actually was Tuesday and Wednesday. And Tuesday I didn't have nearly as many meetings, and so I was able to find a place to stream the testimony on YouTube and listen to it as I worked on some other projects. And I came away from Tuesday's Senate testimony. Wednesday was the House testimony, the two committees between the two. And I came away from Tuesday's testimony with a number of observations. And I could talk about them really for a long time. I'll maybe run through them quickly in case you couldn't read the blog post and just give you a few thoughts on each one. So, number one, I think in general, Zuckerberg performed better than the senators did on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, I thought the House members, of what I saw, though I saw much less on Wednesday than I did on Tuesday, I thought the House members maybe did a little bit better. At least the questions I saw were a little bit more pointed and specific and not as general as maybe the senators were. The House members that I watched seemed like they were more prepared and just ready to ask tougher questions of Zuckerberg. But when it comes to the senators, I thought Zuckerberg kind of outperformed the senators. He didn't do anything awesome. There was nothing about Zuckerberg's testimony or answers to the questions he was asked that was out of this world and great, but he didn't make any mistakes. And he didn't say anything on camera that could be damaging to his company. I think what was frustrating for me, and I talk about this later in the post as well, is that there were a number of questions I think he knew the answers to that if he answered them on camera would have hurt him. And so he said, I'll have to have my team get back to you on that. So I think that was frustrating for me because on one of the questions he was asked about how Facebook tracks activity around the internet, and he said he would have to get back to his team get back to the senators on that with his team. And I know how Facebook tracks people around the internet, so I don't know why Mark Zuckerberg thought he had to come back later. Sorry, the camera got out of focus there for a second. So that's the first thing. Second thing, Mark Zuckerberg left the door open for further discussion about a paid version of Facebook. Someone asked him if that was an option, that people could avoid being targeted by ads or having their information taken for ads with a paid version of Facebook. And in 2010, he said Facebook will always be free. And in 2018, at this hearing this past week, he said there will always be a free version of Facebook, which those are two different things. And so I think we may in the future see a paid version of Facebook, but I don't know. I mean, they're not going to want to do that because gathering the information from us is ultimately more profitable than $10 a month. It's really worth more than that. Senator Ted Cruz quizzed Zuckerberg about what Facebook determines is good or bad for its platform. I thought that was really good, but honestly, I thought Ben Sass took it a step further a little bit later and really got to the heart of the question, which was around hate speech. Obviously, all of us agree terroristic threats or content should have no place on Facebook, and that's what Zuckerberg kept going back to, I think, to waste time, honestly, because everybody agrees on that. But obviously, Republicans in particular, and the conservative constituents they represent, are concerned about organizations that are largely left-leaning or run by left-leaning people suppressing conservative speech. And unfortunately, I think too much time was spent on that over the course of the 2 days of testimony because a bunch of senators were basically just trying to point out how Facebook has persecuted conservatives, and I think that's off base. But I think Ben Sass did a really good job asking Mark Zuckerberg to define hate speech, and he didn't. He couldn't define hate speech. And I think there are certain viewpoints held by conservatives in particular that may be construed by others as hate speech, even though the viewpoints may not be communicated in a hateful way. Pro-life stuff or anti-gay marriage stuff or whatever could be construed as hate speech by some, and but they may be perfectly legitimate viewpoints. So SAS got to that, and in the blog post I have a video of their discussion, which was good. Fifth, Zuckerberg avoided the question about tracking users' browsing habits once they leave Facebook. I already talked about that. Just Google the Facebook Pixel, and that's literally what it's created for. And Representative Dingell on Wednesday did a better job of asking Mark about this and asked a much more pointed question about how Facebook tracks people around the web. And I tweeted that out if you want to try to find it. Sixth, Senator Lindsey Graham asked Zuckerberg why anyone should expect Facebook to be able to self-regulate. So I'm not in favor of the government over-regulating in any space, but I think social media is going to have to be regulated by the government, if for no other reason than it's clear that companies like Facebook have not been good at self-regulating. And they've been given a decade to self-regulate, and they haven't. And so I think eventually the government's going to have to come in and regulate them to some extent. And I think that's good. And Zuckerberg showed some openness to that. So we'll see how that develops. And lastly, number 7, Senator Maggie Hassan Hassan, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, from New Hampshire, asked Mark Zuckerberg how he balances the tension between doing what is best for users and doing what is best for advertisers. Those two things can often pull against each other. That's why it's a tension. Facebook relies on selling ads as its primary source of revenue, and it does this because the data that it has on its users is so vast and specific. At the same time, Facebook says it wants to lock down the data of its users, but these two things are in tension with one another. So that's most of my reflection from the Zuckerberg hearing. Quickly, and I don't know, I have the window open, there's someone weed eating outside. I apologize if you can hear that. But I want to recommend this book to you. I make no money from recommending this book to you. In fact, the book's published by Crossway, which is like a Lifeway competitor, I guess you could say, though I have a lot of friends and nice folks who work there. This book was given to me by Marty Duran, who runs the Lifeway Pastors blog, which is a great blog. If you're a pastor, it's a great blog to check out. But he asked me if I would do a short book review on this. And so I did that for the Lifeway Pastors blog. It ran a couple weeks ago, and I was given permission to rerun the book review on the Lifeway Social blog this week, and so I did that just today. And so I recommend, read my book review, see what you think. I recommend this book. It says a student's guide. I actually think that's a misnomer. There's nothing studenty about this, other than I guess it's just kind of an introduction to these topics and how to look at them from a Christian perspective. I'm not a student. I guess I'm always a student, always learning, but I'm not a college student or anything, and I found this to be super helpful. It's by a professor from Wheaton. I'm not going to try to pronounce the last name. Schuhart, maybe? Schuhart. Dr. Reed Schuhart, and he actually studied under Neil Postman, which is like one of my idols. So it felt very Postman-esque if you've ever read Amusing Ourselves to Death or anything like that. I highly recommend it. And the great thing is maybe this is why it's a student's guide. It's like a super short read. I don't know if you can tell. It's literally like 100 pages, including the footnotes. So, including the endnotes. So check it out. I think it's cheap. It's not too long. I'm guessing it's like $10 or something like that. So see if you can pick up a copy of that. I recommend it. If you're just interested in how to look at media, journalism, or communications from a Christian perspective, it is the best little book I've read on that subject. So I highly recommend that to you. And again, I promise I don't benefit in any way from it other than I just want to pass along something that I love. So I hope this video has been helpful for you this week. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will talk to you again soon.